A few years back, I found myself stretched out on the back seat of my coach late one evening, just killing time until my passengers finished up their night out. I'd turned off all the lights and left the door unlocked, figuring it was easier than having someone wake me up if they came back early. Around midnight, a pair of women quietly slipped onto the coach, not realizing I was there in the darkness. They started chatting away, and honestly, the conversation caught me off guard. They were joking about their husbands, and apparently their boyfriends, assets, if you catch my drift. For some reason, that whole exchange popped back into my head recently, and I decided to jot down my own take on it. Before I go any further, I've got to give a big thank you to Ladies Sybil and Texan for being patient with me, fixing my mistakes, and encouraging me through the process. I also have to admit, even after they check my writing, I always end up tinkering with it again before it's done. This little story's meant to be lighthearted, so I hope you get a laugh out of it. So there I was, flying back into Heathrow on a late flight, and let me tell you, the drive heading west was brutal. It was the August bank holiday, which, if you don't know, is basically the worst traffic day of the year. There were wrecks all along the highway, traffic backed up for what seemed like forever, and by the time I finally made it home, I was completely wiped out and not exactly in a cheerful mood. When I walked through the door, my wife Allison, who I'd been married to for 10 years, greeted me with her usual warmth. "Hey, honey," she said. "Want some breakfast?" I figured I might as well eat something before hitting the sack, hoping to shake off that jet lag. As we sat down over bacon and eggs, Allison started giving me the rundown of her week. I'll be honest, I was half asleep and barely keeping up with what she was saying. But then, out of nowhere, she dropped something I never expected. "Robert, have you ever thought about swinging?" she asked. I tried to play it cool and acted like I didn't get what she meant. "Not sure I follow, babe. What exactly do you mean by swinging?" She replied, "Swapping partners. For intimacy." I shook my head. "No, that's never crossed my mind. Why do you ask?" She went on, "Well, some of the girls at the tennis club were chatting about it in the locker room. I just wondered if it was ever something you'd considered." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Sweetheart, you're all I need. I've never felt the urge to look elsewhere." She gave me this knowing look and said, "Of course you'd say that. You'd been with other women before we got married. But me, I was a total rookie on our wedding night. You're the only man I've ever been with. I guess I'm just curious what it might be like to be with someone else." Trying to reassure her, I smiled and said, "No need to wonder, love. Guys are all built pretty much the same. And those ladies I dated before taught me a thing or two about how to make it work." But she wouldn't let it go. "Still, I wonder if it'd be different with someone else." I started to feel uneasy. "Allison, I'm not sure I like where you're headed with this. Are you saying you want to be with another man?" She nodded, kind of hesitantly. "Yeah, I think I do. Would it bother you?" I was honest. Of course it would. That's not something I'd be okay with. She tried to explain, it'd only be physical, not about love. "Don't you trust me?" I took a deep breath. "I trust you, sure. I just don't know if I could handle the idea of you being with someone else." She pushed back. "So you don't really love me, then? If you did, you'd trust I wouldn't fall for another guy." That got my attention. "Wait, him? Are we talking about someone in particular? Sounds like you already have someone in mind." She admitted, "Well, I was thinking about Tony Marsh." I almost laughed. "Tony Marsh? You've got to be kidding me. That guy's a total jerk. He's never treated women right, which is probably why he's still single." Allison shrugged. "The girls say he's a real catch, and apparently he's, well, pretty impressive in the size department." I couldn't believe it. "Impressive, huh? Is that what this is all about?" She got a little serious. "Come on, Rob. You're the only one I've ever seen. They say Tony's, a lot bigger, and I'm just curious what that's like." I tried to keep my cool. "Are you saying I'm not enough?" She shrugged. "How would I know? You're the only man I've been with. I just want to know how you compare." I warned her, "You might want to be careful with that kind of thinking. Sometimes, comparing only makes things worse." She didn't understand. "What do you mean?" I tried to explain. "Most guys don't like to be measured up against other men, especially in that way. It's an ego thing." She just laughed. "Don't be so dramatic. I just want to try being with someone else. It's not like it would hurt you." I looked at her seriously. "It could be a big mistake, You might find out that things aren't the same with me after you've tried something different." She smiled, now you're just being silly. I love you. Nothing could change that. But I couldn't help myself. Maybe, but if super stud Tony does have something extra, you might not enjoy being with me like you used to. She grinned. I think you're just jealous of Tony's reputation. Allison, let me just say, whatever Tony's got, I'm honestly not the least bit jealous. I'm pretty grateful for what I was given, and I'd hope you are too. That put an end to our talk for the night, and I went off to bed. But over the next week or so, Allison kept circling back to the subject. Each time, I told her, straight up, that the idea of her being with Tony Marsh didn't sit right with me, and I wasn't sure I could ever be okay with it. Finally, she told me flat out that she was going to sleep with him whether I liked it or not. She said it was her body, her decision, and I had no right to keep her from experiencing what she called something bigger. When Friday evening rolled around and I got home from work, I found Allison in the middle of getting herself all dolled up. Are we going out somewhere? I asked, trying to play it cool. She didn't even look at me. Well, I am. But you're not. Excuse me? I'm heading out with the girls tonight. If luck's on my side, maybe we'll run into Tony Marsh, and I'll finally see what the fuss is about. Yeah, I was angry, who wouldn't be? But at least she was honest about her plans. She could have just snuck off to see him behind my back, but instead she was upfront about it. I guess that's something. I tried to distract myself by tackling a few chores around the house. Eventually, I just settled in front of the TV and tried not to think about it. It was about midnight when I heard a car pull up outside. Soon after, Allison stumbled through the door looking like she'd just barely made it home. Her blouse was open almost to her waist, and she was holding her tights in her hand. So, did you have a fun night, Allison? I asked as casually as I could manage. She groaned. Not at all. Turns out Tony's not nearly as impressive as everyone says, and his manners are even worse. I just shook my head and told her, yeah, I heard he used to brag about himself back in high school. That was until I moved here. He stopped showing off once he caught sight of me in the locker room showers. Why didn't you ever tell me? She asked. Tell you what? That you were actually, more impressive than Tony. Everybody calls him Big Tony, so I figured he must have been the best endowed around. I couldn't help but laugh. No, Allison. People call Tony Big Prick, but not for the reason you think. They're saying he's got about as much sense as the average jerk. She looked kind of embarrassed. Well, you never mentioned that you were, ahead of him. That's not something a guy brags about, Allison. The only thing I ever brag about is how lucky I am to have a beautiful wife. Though honestly, I can't really say that anymore. She blinked. What do you mean? I didn't suddenly turn ugly, did I? No, you're not ugly, Allison. But you did just become single. I moved your clothes to your mom's house earlier today. Please leave. She stared at me, stunned. You can't do that. You can't just kick me out. Without another word, I picked Allison up, carried her gently out onto the porch, and closed the door behind her. Who says I can't? I called out. Goodbye, Allison. Let me know if you find what you're looking for. And then, just for good measure, I shouted through the door, maybe I'll stop by the tennis club tomorrow. I hear they're in short supply over there. I doubt I'll have any trouble finding company, do you? Sometimes, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. But life? Well, it just keeps moving forward.